twisters, whirlwinds, funnels. Whatever the name, tornadoes are one of nature's most violent storms.
The tornado hit me, lifted me, tumbled me over.
In mere minutes, they can demolish homes,
I prepared to die.
level entire towns,
It looked like a nuclear weapon had gone off.
and destroy people's lives.
I knew by looking at my leg what going to be able to be saved.
Scientists are now mining the tornadoes for data, revealing surprising insights about the total impact of their violent, unpredictable nature.
Today, the target is 10 to 20 minutes of lead time on a tornado warning.
Hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes.
This was the deadliest tornado on record.
The impact can be devastating.
God completely wiped it off the map.
We step inside the disaster
We were running for our lives.
It hits like a freight train.
and unravel the unexpected and sometimes jaw-dropping total impact.
Believe it or not, some good can come from these monster storms.
It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. At Joplin High School, the class of 2011 has just finished their graduation ceremony. It's an exciting day filled with anticipation and hope for the future.
I go to Joplin almost every year to photograph the high school graduation. It was a sunny day. Blue skies, pretty clouds.
Joplin, Missouri is a small city along the classic Route 66.
It's your normal Midwestern town. We lived in a small subdivision out there, just far enough away from town, but it was still a very tight-knit community.
With graduation over, Stacy wraps up her day and gets ready to head home.
We photographed the graduation, and I remember packing up all our equipment. So I walked out the front door, and a gentleman opened the door and said, "Hey, do you need help?" And I'm like, "No." And he said, "Wow, it's really humid today. I think we're gonna get like a storm or something." And I was like, "Yeah, it's hot."
As the afternoon draws to a close, a tornado alert siren rings out for Jasper County and Joplin. Situated in the heart of Tornado Alley, these warnings happen often, and 75% are false alarms. Most residents ignore the warning and continue on with their day.
I'm thinking this is sort of typical. We see stuff like this. I'm not going to panic.
Little do they know that this is about to become a historic twister. Dusty is in the midst of work prepping for surgery.
We had scheduled to perform a hip incision and drainage for an infection the patient had gotten in the hip. It's a routine surgery as far as the technicality, but it is an emergency that you have to get to pretty quickly, or the patient will continue to get sick and become toxic or septic.
With her radio off, Stacy begins to drive home. She doesn't hear the tornado warning or the sirens.
I live in Kansas City, Missouri, and it is about 200 miles to Joplin. Knowing I had a 2-hour drive, I stopped at the gas station to get a drink. The clerk was listening to the radio, and he told me that there was weather coming into Joplin. I kind of thought, oh, I'm going out of town. It's not going to affect me.
But before Stacy can leave, a man convinces her to wait the storm out in the gas station, just to be safe. Dusty hears the first indication that something is amiss over the hospital's loudspeaker.
We heard code gray right as the patient went to sleep. It was just a code for the hospital to notify everyone in the hospital overhead that there was a severe weather threat in the area. Oh, I wasn't worried at all. Those happen all the time. Anytime there's a big thunderstorm or something, they call it or the sirens go off in town. So not that it's anybody's crying wolf, but it's not something you get excited about. I'd ask the anesthesiologist, is it okay if we continue? Because even though I'm doing the surgery, they're kind of in charge of things as far as keeping the patient safe. And she said, look, this is an emergent surgery and we have to do it, so let's just do it.
Outside, the skies darken and the wind picks up.
And I thought, well, you know, if there's going to be a tornado, I want to take pictures of the tornado. So I grabbed my camera, grabbed an SD card, made sure my battery was good, grabbed my car keys, and I ran into the store because by then it was completely dark. I really didn't anticipate it being something so big. You know, I just thought, wow, it would be great to get pictures of a tornado. You know, not many people get to do that.
Although tornadoes are common in the Midwest, a unique set of conditions are required for them to form.
Like, you can see little huge clouds going around it.
Look at that!
So the key to how a thunderstorm develops a tornado is the updraft. Usually the downdraft from the storm wrapping around and causing it to converge into a small point. And that creates the tornado conditions of the ground.
There was about 18 people already in the gas station. I kind of stood by the windows because I wanted to get a shot of the tornado. The glass broke. We all rushed back to the back of the gas station. The wind was going so fast through the gas station that the walls were kind of shaking in, and we can feel cool air. Somebody said, "Hey, what's behind that door?" He said, "It's a cooler." So somebody opened the door. We ran into the cooler. We all kind of crouched down inside of there.
At the hospital, a shift in the air sets off a warning bell in Dusty's head.
I looked at my assistant, Chris, across the table, and I said, "Do you feel your ears popping?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "What the hell do you think that is?" And he said, "I don't know." I said, "Do you think it's the barometric pressure dropping outside?" He said, "It may be from the storm." And then it was 5 seconds later that the tornado hit the building and kind of all hell broke loose.
At the gas station, Stacy is huddled in the walk-in cooler, trying to stay calm.
So we're in the cooler, and you don't really hear the wind. You just hear the sounds, and like the tinging sounds of things falling onto the roof. So it's like ting, 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 ting the whole time. People screaming, people crying, and then we felt that first wave of the tornado go through. After the first wave went through, it felt like forever. We thought we were safe after the first one. We thought it was over with, and then the mother lode came through.
Oh my gosh!
As a tornado hits a hospital in Joplin, Missouri,
What's it doing?
surgeon Dr. Dusty Smith and his team are plunged into darkness in the middle of an operation.
Everything just blew up at once. The walls blew up, the ceiling fell in, water started spewing from the walls where the pipes were. It just felt like a bomb detonated. I just said, okay, we'll continue. Luckily, the extra tech in the room had a flashlight to turn on and shine it in the wound so that we could keep working.
While Stacy and the others from the gas station huddle in the walk-in refrigerator, mayhem reigns outside their tiny metal safe house. The tornado rips apart the gas station. It sounds like a war zone outside the refrigerator.
It just felt like we were in this like sacred little box. It just felt like we were in this box with 20 people, hearing the wind, hearing the noise, you know, feeling the coolness, hearing the thunder, seeing lightning flashes. I screamed at the top of my lungs the whole time. I prepared to die.
This is an EF5 tornado, the highest rating on the enhanced Fujita scale and the most catastrophic.
With tornadoes, you obviously can't put an instrument in its way every time and hope to know how strong it was. So we actually rate tornadoes based on the damage that they cause. EF0, which is the weakest, starts at about 90 kilometers an hour, to the strongest at top end, an EF5, and that's 315 kilometers an hour and greater. EF4, all the walls are down. Basically, the house is destroyed. And if you get to EF5, all of that debris gets wiped right off the foundation. That's how strong the tornado is.
EF5s are rare. Only about 2% of known tornadoes in the US are EF5s. But like the tri-state tornado, when they hit, the impact is catastrophic.
The tri-state tornado occurred on March 18th, 1925. It traveled 350 kilometers, began in Missouri, traveled through Illinois, and ended up in Indiana, giving it the tri-state name. The width of this tornado was almost 2 kilometers, and it was moving at about 100 kilometers per hour. This was a long duration, long track tornado, lasted 3.5 hours. Being 1925, there wasn't anything to detect the tornado or get a warning out, so it arrived in those 3 states without warning. It's the deadliest known tornado in US history at 695 deaths and over 2,000 injuries. We weren't doing tornado rating back then, so it was later rated at F5 based on the damage that was caused. The damage from this tornado was about $16.5 million in 1925 dollars. This is $1.4 billion today.
Thad is working in the church when the tornado sirens sound. He and his colleagues take cover in the church basement.
I'm watching the weather, trying to figure out what's going on. I'm on the phone with my dad, and he's telling me it doesn't look very good over here. My mom and dad are on the west side of Joplin. So in the middle of my phone call, it goes dead. I'm listening to the sirens, I'm seeing the green skies, I've lost my dad's contact on the phone, I'm trying to call him back, I can't get a hold of him. So I'm getting concerned.
For Dr. Dusty and his team, the storm is about to become a life-threatening situation.
The tornado took off the back end of the hospital. Then the wind came inside and it blew the doors to the operating room open, which debris was flying in. And luckily, my physician's assistant dove at the doors and then pushed the doors closed. The patient's wide open. I was just trying to cover the wound the best I could while Chris was holding the doors closed. And I remember at some point, Chris looking at me saying, I don't think I can hold the doors any longer. And I said, brother, you got to.
Finally, after what feels like an eternity for Stacy, the refrigerator stops shaking. They can no longer hear the world outside crumbling.
There was like a calmness, and we all were like saying, I love you, man. You know, like, for me, I was quiet because I was just relieved. I just wanted to go. I wanted to get out of there. So we tried to go through the door that we came through, but there was so much debris in the gas station. We were stuck inside that cooler.
Things are no better in the operating room. With the surgery complete, Dusty and his team need to get the patient to the recovery unit, but it's easier said than done.
When we opened the doors of the room, there was a large pile of rubble and debris blocking the doorway. And when we entered the hallway, it looked like a movie scene, without a better way to say it. There were sparks flying. The smell of gas was incredible. I remember telling my PA, hey, do you smell the gas? And he said, yeah. I said, well, I hope these damn sparks don't ignite it. So we couldn't go get the gurney and just wheel it into the room. We had to go out there, crawl over the debris, grab it, and then crawl back over the debris into the room, put the patient on the table, and then carry the patient over the debris again and into the recovery room. It was just a surreal scene because they had moved all the patients from the emergency room into the recovery room because the emergency room got hit directly as well. It looked like a bad MASH episode in there. It was just complete chaos. Once we got done and got the patient to safety, then I clicked into father mode.
But with no cell phone service, Dusty can't reach his family. He has no idea if they're okay.
My physician's assistant and I went out back toward the parking lot, hoping to find our cars. It looked like a nuclear weapon had gone off outside. I looked at my physician's assistant, I said, I need to go home and check on my family.
Twisted metal litters the parking lot. The roads are blocked. His home is 13 kilometers away through the devastation. He does the only thing he can.
I started running.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
30 minutes after the first warning sirens, reports begin to emerge that an EF5 tornado has hit Joplin, Missouri. survivors, now trapped inside the twisted remains of a walk-in cooler at a gas station, are desperate to find a way to escape.
We started smelling gas, and we thought the gas station's gonna blow up. We were stuck inside that cooler. We did see a little light above us, so we thought, okay, we gotta climb. And then a couple of the guys gathered like cases of beer, and we made a ladder out of beer. And one by one, we all just jumped out. I kind of stayed behind a little bit because I wanted to photograph everything in that cooler. I think I was the second to last person out. Once we dropped down into the grass, there was nothing left of that gas station at all, besides the cooler. It didn't look like a gas station anymore. It just looked like a bunch of rubble, you know? So we probably wouldn't have survived if we did not go into the cooler of the gas station.
As the gas station survivors come to grips with the destruction around them, Dusty takes off headlong into the devastation.
The streets were completely blocked. There was power lines down, parts of the street were just gone. There was no way you were gonna drive home or anything. I had to get home somehow. My home was about 8 miles from the hospital, so I took off running. I'm in decent shape, but I don't run. But at that time, I could have run whatever to get home, because that's all on my mind. And all I'm doing is thinking about my family.
After the tornado passes, a man runs into the church and tells Thad and his colleagues that Joplin has been wiped out. The city Thad grew up in, where his elderly parents live, is gone.
I knew after seeing the hospital being hit on TV that my parents' house, being west of the hospital, had already been hit. So at that point, I knew I had to do something.
Stacy stumbles into the street, stunned at the devastation. The 20 survivors from the refrigerator exchange phone numbers. In those few minutes, they've developed a bond that will last a lifetime. They hug before parting ways, in search of answers about their families.
My car was upside down. I start walking down the street, and I had my camera in hand. I started photographing the things around me. I just kept walking and photographing and crying and looking everywhere. I don't know what street I was on, so I just stopped by this stop sign that was like on the ground. So I sat there on the curb. I called my boss, and I was like, I'm okay. I don't know how to get out of here. And I just sat there waiting.
Running on adrenaline, Dusty navigates the 13-kilometer gauntlet home through twisted metal, overturned cars, and demolished homes. He's relieved to see that his house is fully intact. He prays his family is safe inside.
So I got to the door of my house after running that far, and as I'm coming inside, I kind of walk up the stairs, and they're in the bedroom upstairs. And I was completely soaked, obviously from rain, and my wife said, "Why are you wet?" And I said, "Do you not know what's happened?" And she said, "No, power went out however many hours ago. And, we've just been sitting up here." They had no idea, thank goodness, of what happened.
It's a stroke of luck that Dusty's family is unharmed, and evidence that tornadoes can cut a distinct line between utter annihilation and coming out completely unscathed. For Thad, when he makes it to his parents, he discovers the house is severely damaged.
Thankfully, they were fine. Shaken up, of course. I continue to walk through the house, checking to make sure what's going on. The roof blown off part of the house. I see a piece of 2x4 that has gone completely through an outside wall through a toaster. When I look down my parents' hallway, I see pictures, one right after another after another. Not touched, not even turned sideways, just as if they had always been. There is a picture of my sister and I, family members, grandparents, still on the wall. And that's when you begin to realize how important the photographic image becomes. The very next day after that, I'm back at the church, and a gentleman come in off the street, And he found a picture in his front yard. He says, "What am I supposed to do with this? This doesn't belong to me. I want to get this back to them." That's when the connection starts happening. Now that's where the picture is becoming more clear of what we needed to do.
Inspired, Thad takes on the task of reuniting people with their lost photos in the wake of natural disasters. In the aftermath of the tornado, new friendships are formed.
About a month after the tornado, we all met up at the gas station to kind of see how everybody was. It was interesting to be so near death with all these people, and then to see them again, and to know that we all survived that moment together.
The Joplin tornado shows the incredible power nature can have.
This tornado was caused by an intense supercell, and the tornado itself was over 1 kilometer wide, had a track that was over 36 kilometers long, grew explosively, and also had that direct impact on a large city, which is something you don't see a lot. Winds from this wedge-shaped tornado reached 200 miles per hour, and the damage was estimated at $2.8 billion, making it the costliest tornado in US history. In 38 minutes, it killed 158 people and injured thousands. The Joplin tornado was the deadliest tornado in the US since modern record keeping began there in the 1950s.
Despite the catastrophic consequences of the Joplin tornado, for some, it has created purpose. Since that fateful day, Thad has helped hundreds of families and survivors find lost memories.
In the Joplin, Missouri tornado, we collected over 35,000 photographic images. We have returned over 18,000 to date, and we're very proud of it. It's a lot of work to do that.
Summer of 31, that's fantastic, because it tells us when it was.
Over 900 families that received a photograph back, and the response has been overwhelming. We're so happy to have helped them, and we want to continue to do that with this city and other places too.
Years later, Dusty has found a new perspective as a result of surviving the deadly tornado.
A lot of people have asked me over the years how it affected me, and it didn't affect me negatively at all. I love storms, oddly enough. It's not that I don't have respect for storms. I'm not going to fear them. I think something that strong and of that magnitude, it's going to take you when it wants to. But I think that's the way Mother Nature works sometimes.
While Joplin survived the cataclysmic force of an EF5 tornado, in California, a construction worker is trapped by yet another deadly act of nature, a firenado. The devastating twisting winds of a tornado can rip the roof off a house in seconds and demolish entire towns in minutes. But what happens when a tornado and fire unite? Sparks fly off the flat tire of an RV along a highway in Redding, California. They ignite the roadside brush. The ensuing blaze engulfs an area 3 times the size of Washington, D.C.
The car fire had been spreading for multiple days, but there was some concern that it was going to spread to the east with some stronger westerly winds, kind of downslope winds, into the northern part of the Central Valley near Redding.
That's Redding right there.
Terry Cummings is part of a team of heavy equipment operators tasked with carving a dirt trench around a subdivision of homes. The containment lines are 3 bulldozer blades wide and designed to halt the advance of the wildfire.
Fire is made up of heat, fuel, and oxygen. And what we're doing in a bulldozer is we're removing fuels from the ground by scraping it and pushing it out of the way or creating a break in the fuel. While we were cutting those lines, I'd been watching the fire. I was starting to get concerned because of how close it was getting. I didn't think it was going to escalate the way it did.
But the fire isn't the only thing crews need to worry about. The fire also receives a tornado rating.
With maximum winds of 143 miles per hour, it was rated as an EF3.
Terry has no idea a unique set of disastrous conditions is brewing.
We usually do our shift changes between 7 and 9. My relief was more novice, and I was watching the fire behavior, and I told him I was going to stay on for another hour or so to make sure everything was safe. I noticed fire catapult through the air, and I looked over to my right. All of a sudden, the fire was burning on the sides of these houses next to me. Within minutes, everything became fire. It was just like a shower of fire started happening all around us.
No one could have predicted what was about to happen next. One of the rarest natural disasters develops right before Terry's eyes. A firenado.
A firenado or a fire tornado is you have a fire-generated vortex that's rotating, and then it extends upward into a pyrocumulonimbus cloud. It's a fancy way of saying you have a tornado made of burnable material that's attached to a thunderstorm cloud.
When a cold pocket of air appears above an extremely hot fire, the heat rises quickly in the same fashion that a tornado forms. Gases drawn up into this column can ignite in the air.
Fire tornado is extremely dangerous because they are unpredictable, they can move rapidly, and they can spread fire quite rapidly as well, too.
In the blink of an eye, Terry and his crew are surrounded by fire.
It was within minutes. There was no start or no end of the fire, just everything was engulfed.
Being in the path of the firenado is a near hopeless situation.
With an EF3 rating for damage, that can debark trees, it can overturn train cars, it can destroy stories of well-built houses. And then you add a fire to that, is not only are you destroying structures with wind, but you're also burning these structures as well, too. If it's so hot that you can melt metal, and then you have winds of 140, 145 miles per hour, that's pretty much a worst-case scenario in terms of a weather event.
Terry has no clear way out. He's surrounded by fire, and his radio communication is failing. Unsure of his fate, Terry can only think of one thing, his girlfriend, Shalai.
I texted Shalai. I guess I just wanted to tell her I love her.
Just as Terry hits send on the text, the fire intensifies.
I looked up, seeing two vehicles. This big dust cloud just engulfed the rear vehicle, like he just disappeared. So I started to turn my dozer to deflect the debris. I didn't want it to break my window, but as soon as I started to turn, my window glass broke, and then all my glass around me broke. It was like I just got hit by a freight train. Then I was like blacked out, and I just heard noise. I felt the tracks of the dozer on my left shin, and I reached out and caught the door jambs, and then I gasped for air.
Stuck in his bulldozer, surrounded by fire, and with winds over 230 kilometers an hour throwing debris at him like bullets, Terry switches to survival mode.
I threw myself into the seat, and I grabbed a bag and stuck it over my face. The winds that were hitting me, it was like a blowtorch. They were really, really strong and really, really fast. I was just screaming and holding on and just guarding my face with the bag. I was thinking, not like this, Lord.
The dire situation is exceptionally rare.
Fire tornadoes are extremely rare, with only the 2 instances recorded. One in 2003 in Canberra, Australia, and then the other one just outside of Reading. With only 2 documented instances of fire tornadoes, there's not a whole lot to go on. But a fire whirl and a fire tornado are pretty similar. The main difference is usually size. Fire whirls are usually smaller, and they occur kind of on the edge of fires. Now, a fire tornado happens under a similar process, however, it's much larger. Fire is usually much more intense, and then the upper part of the atmosphere is usually more conducive for vertical motion and stretching. So a fire tornado and a pyrocumulonimbus is much more similar to a tornadic supercell than it is to a fire whirl.
In the maw of the storm, Terry is powerless.
The tornado came down, hit me, lifted me, tumbled me over, dropped me. I could feel it engulfing my waist, my neck, face, ears, hands. It felt like my limbs were just melting. It felt like they were burning off. So I knew I was getting burned, but I didn't agree with it. And I'm like, no way.
In an adrenaline-fueled moment, Terry makes a break for safety.
I jumped out of the machine. I looked up and I saw 2 vehicle lights, and I made the decision to just make a run for it.
Somehow, he makes it through the blowing inferno to the vehicles.
I poured water over my hands, and then it was another, 20, 30 minutes, I guess, at least, before we escaped back out. It was a very unbearable pain in my hands, and just I could feel it all around everywhere. But they got me to the ambulance.
Terry was one of the lucky ones.
That is unbelievable.
An EF3 tornado by itself is very strong and can cause severe damage. And then you couple it with a large, rapidly spreading wildfire, and the damage is pretty unbelievable. It was a half-mile wide at its widest, and also was on the ground for 2 miles.
There's 5 people that died. I think it was over 1,000 homes that were burned. All the debris. I feel blessed for sure. God was definitely present through it all.
Power line tower. That's crazy.
There's still no way of really predicting fire tornadoes. There's some scientists that are working diligently to produce forecasts for these, but still very early on in the process.
As scientists begin to untangle the rare firenado, their increasing ability to accurately measure and predict tornadoes is showing a change in when and where tornadoes occur, revealing an increase in the occurrence of the behemoth of them all, the supercell. In 2011, thousands of kilometers away from the scorched fury of a Californian firenado, another rare tornado phenomenon tears through the eastern U.S., a super outbreak.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Did you see that?
In the small community of Pleasant Grove, Alabama, machine shop worker Ray Watson listens to the news. They're calling for bad weather.
The day of the storm, everybody closed early because they were expecting bad weather that day. Most businesses closed at least by 3 o'clock. I kind of thought everybody was going home too early and overreacted. My wife was preparing dinner. I started watching a live feed video of the tornado going through town Tuscaloosa, which is just devastating. Tuscaloosa is probably 30 miles. Little did I know, in about 30 minutes, it was going to go through my backyard.
The Tuscaloosa tornado is just part of a rare tornado super outbreak.
An outbreak is when you've got a whole bunch of tornadoes occurring in a time period, usually the day, and over a certain location. That can be maybe 6 to 10 to 20 tornadoes.
There it is. Oh, it's a doozy.
The difference between an outbreak and a super outbreak is that instead of having the necessary ingredients for tornadoes in one location, one region, it's extended over a large area. And basically every thunderstorm that goes up ends up becoming a supercell and producing a tornado.
There it is. Good Lord.
As Ray watches the news, he has no idea that the tornado heading their way is just one of an astonishing 15 tornadoes rated EF4 or higher that will touch down across Mississippi, Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama that day.
As I was watching it, it started veering only about 1.5 miles from my house. So I got my wife and I said, we got to go to the basement. Once we got in the basement, all the damage started hitting the house, and the house started shaking, and the ground started shaking. I pushed my wife into a front room that we had underneath her front porch. The roof to that room was a concrete slab. When we stepped in there, I said, well, the house just left. The sound of the house being ripped off the foundation, I mean, it's just like ripping a board in half. And it's pulling water lines into it, it's pulling the gas lines, things like that. And it's just ripping everything apart.
They're lucky to have made it downstairs. Even the best tornado warning systems leave little time to prepare.
Before the arrival of Doppler radar in the 1980s, it was really hard to get lead time on tornadoes. You're relying on someone to see the tornado, so obviously by that time the tornado is already occurring.
With a threat for hail the size of quarters.
Today, computer models take in all kinds of data. There's millions of points of data from satellites, from weather balloons, from surface stations, all coming in and being initialized so that the model can produce a forecast. With Doppler radar, you can actually see the rotation in the supercell thunderstorm that precedes the development of the tornado. Over the last decade, computer models have gotten really good at predicting the environment in which tornadoes can develop. What it's not good at yet is the exact time, the exact location. Today, the target is 10 to 20 minutes of lead time on a tornado warning.
As Ray and his wife's house is ripped from its foundation, a supporting wall holding the concrete slab above them is torn away, and Ray's life is changed forever.
I actually blacked out for a few seconds. I woke up, I saw a concrete slab on my leg. I knew by looking at my leg, it wasn't going to be able to be saved.
Pinned beneath the concrete slab, Ray is desperate for help and to get his wife to safety.
My wife, she didn't want to leave me under there by myself. I said, well, you need to get out of here so you don't get hurt. So she did reluctantly. I was trapped, I was pressed against the concrete. Water lines had ruptured and there was water flowing through there and I could smell natural gas and I just thought this is it.
But then, a small miracle. A volunteer firefighter and a nurse come to Ray's rescue.
Just pure luck. The two most perfect people to come help me after that storm. He brought his little fireman axe and he put it at the foot of the slab while he got volunteers to pick it up so that it could be removed. And a guy just reached in there and grabbed my belt. He said, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna reach in there and grab you by the belt when we get it over. He said, I'll do the pulling and you do the screaming. And that's about how it went too. And as soon as he did, the nurse, she walked over and they had done scared up rope and a stick and all this and made a tourniquet.
Ray is placed in an induced coma and undergoes several surgeries. As he predicted, he loses his leg. But April 27th was just one day of a longer super outbreak. Between April 25th and 28th, an unprecedented 362 tornadoes broke out from Texas to New York. The largest super outbreak in history. 321 people are killed, 316 on April 27th alone.
It was by us in just seconds, 10 seconds, and it just leveled houses. There were 6 deaths within blocks of my house. We rebuilt our house. We've got a storm room built in the basement. I take my cautions, but they're just a way of life down here. I've just been lucky.
Surprisingly, the super outbreak of 2011 extended all the way into Canada. But it's not the only incidence of a tornado in the Great North. And some researchers are trying to answer the question, are tornadoes spreading? Tornadoes, firenadoes, super outbreaks. While these dangerous weather events are generally known to occur in hot spots in the dusty south, in recent years, the number of tornadoes detected in Canada has been on the rise. But what's behind the worrying trend?
It was a beautiful day. It was hot, humid, and we decided to sit on the front deck for a while, and we were having a beer. And it kind of started to rain some big drops.
There were massive drops, like they were huge. And I had said to Les, I've never seen anything like that before. Like they're huge, and it didn't even seem that cloudy out.
The rain clears, but while all else seems normal, something peculiar happens.
Our dog was going crazy, and we thought, why is he acting like that? It's quite clear outside. There's maybe a small cloud, but nothing that should make him so panicky. Lo and behold, he had a reason why he was in such a panic.
With warm, moist air from the south and dry, cooler air from the Rockies, Manitoba is vulnerable to tornadoes.
The prairies in Canada are an extension of the plains in the US, and the storms in the summertime, they move from the plains in the US up into the prairies in Canada, and that's an extension of that tornado alley.
Little did Lynn and Les know that the humid day they were enjoying would bring disaster. Before they know it, a tornado is bearing down on them.
I've never ever seen a tornado before or been in one, so okay, just go to the basement, then it'll just go right over top of us or by us and nothing will happen. We had a sectional couch with the mattress, the bed out, and he grabbed the mattress and, smart thinking for him, put it over top of us, and he was trying to get also our little dog Teak underneath the mattress.
Then the tornado hit.
I panicked. It just seemed to happen so fast. It was like 10 engines of a train, or the train going by. Like, it was enormous. The sound was so loud.
I've used every force of energy that I could to stay down there and strain. Don't know how long it lasted. I looked up and I could see sunny sky. I said, "No, the house is gone."
In just a few violent minutes, this record-setting tornado caused widespread destruction.
The Eli tornado is Canada's one and only tornado rated at the 5 level. It was one of only 9 tornadoes between 1999 and 2011 in North America that reached the EF5 level, with winds reaching 315 plus kilometers per hour. Very rare in Canada to get a tornado of that strength. In the last 20 years, we've only seen one EF4 and one EF5 in Canada.
As Les and Lynn crawl out from their basement, they see firsthand the destruction the rare EF5 Canadian tornado has caused.
It looked like a war zone outside. It looked like a bomb went off.
I was gonna get in my car. There was no garage, no cars. There was just glass, and the trees were destroyed, houses were destroyed.
The whole house was completely gone, stuff in the basement. And they always tell you that tornadoes don't suck below ground, but this one was different. It decided to do that.
But as happened with the Joplin tornado photographs, unusual things appear from amongst the debris.
This was my dress that I got married in 1976 to this handsome dude here. After our wedding, I had it dry cleaned, boxed it up, put it in the closet. The tornado took my dress. And the next day, my husband said, "I'm going for a walk into the field," which is across from where our house was, "and I'm going to go check and see what I can find." And I wish I would have videotaped him, but here he come across the field holding my dress. We built in the same spot. It's changed my life in a lot of ways, and less on both of our lives, but also to be thankful for the things that we have. You know, we're happy to be alive, that's all I'm saying.
But what do events like the Eli tornado tell us? Is the danger for tornadoes increasing?
A lot of the data associated with tornadoes has been changing over the years due to human factors. Our cities are growing, and the areas that are vulnerable to tornadoes are also growing. And the number of people that can report tornadoes in those areas are growing. So somehow you've got to look at the data and try to pull out a trend that is unaffected by all these human factors.
So what is the data saying about how these weather systems are evolving?
The US has been finding that the number of tornadoes has not really increased over the years, but they've become more clustered, so that when you have an outbreak, there are more tornadoes in that outbreak, but there are less tornado days through the year. Another change that's been detected is a slight change in the location of Tornado Alley in the US. It's starting to move slightly northeast. Whether that's due to climate change or not, we don't know. Making the links to climate change is the next step.
Researchers are also trying to unravel the increasing reports of tornadoes in Canada.
The Northern Tornadoes Project is a project at the University of Western Ontario that aims to detect every tornado in Canada, try to get a true picture of where tornadoes are occurring across the country. In Canada, we have noted an increase in the number of tornadoes in a number of locations. A lot of that is due to the increased number of reports that we're getting. There's also a concerted effort to get those reports.
In our digitally connected world, More companies are also creating increasingly advanced smartphone apps that not only track the weather, but track tornadoes and help direct users away from the path of danger.
4.5 billion people own a smartphone. That's just revolutionized our ability for meteorologists, for public safety officials, for anybody who needs to stay up to date with what's happening with severe weather. RadarScope takes the raw binary data that comes out of the Weather Service radar and downloads it directly to your phone and then renders the image on your phone. Everything with tornadoes and tornado alertings are not measured in hours, they're measured in minutes. And so everything we're trying to do is just carve out a few more minutes.
A few minutes can mean the difference between life and death. The peace of mind from accurate detection could be priceless.
My mother and I have this ongoing argument about it. Every time there's a storm, she obviously freaks out because she's afraid it's going to head right for her little baby boy. I always tell her, Mom, God and the tornadoes had a chance to get me that day, and they decided not to. And she said, boy, you have to remember, you're not 10 feet tall and indestructible.
Whether the range of tornadoes is expanding isn't clear, but while scientists work to decipher the changing patterns of tornadoes, the quest to understand their total impact and gain a few precious minutes of warning continues.